Good evening, you're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, President Pranab Mukherjee speaks to NDTV on his message of tolerance. Arun Jaitley also speaks out on intolerance and vandalism. Will this end the politics of hate? Also tonight, tension in Punjab over the desecration of the Sikh holy book. Central forces have taken over security in major cities. Is this the biggest crisis for the Badal government? That's coming up in about 30 minutes from now. But first, once again, President Pranab Mukherjee has spoken out on tolerance and diversity, this time in an exclusive interview to NDTV's Monideepa Banerjee. Mr. Mukherjee said today that our civilization accepts differences and respects dissent, saying that our daily actions should convey tolerance. Strong words from the President, who's been making a point of repeating this message every few days over the last 2 weeks.
The President has had a message for all of the country this festive occasion. It is also a message laced with several concerns. Sir, your message this festive season?
No, you know what I am saying all these days, and particularly on last few occasions I have already stated. Durga Puja is just not a religious function. It's the great social festival of Hindu society, integrating all sections of the society, conveying a message of peace and harmony. During this function, rather few days, the different cross sections of the people are fully involved and they integrate themselves in what we call, it's a festival, not merely Durga worship, but Durga festival. In Bengali also we call it Durgotsav, Durga Utsav. Therefore what I stated that we should recognize this underlying message and convey it in our action, day-to-day practices, and it can be, rather it should be the part of our civilization and culture, in our behavior, in our approach and attitude. I wish the entire community and all concerned, every section of the society, larger society, very best wishes. Let them enjoy the festival, at the same time carry the message of this festival in their day-to-day lives and practices.
So your message has been laced with concern about tolerance and acceptance of dissent waning in the country. These are the words that you have used the other day and on the 7th of October. Why? What are your real concerns today?
No, there is no particular reason. Particularly in yesterday's function I mentioned about the question with which I was rather confronted in my visit during the 3 West Asian countries very recently. That's why it was the occasion that I referred that. They asked me that what is the chemistry of your very successful multi-party parliamentary democracy, which is a very sophisticated political instruments of administration in a country of so much diversity, which can be described as huge diversity, various languages, races, religion, customs, belief, and such a huge multitude of people. Then I told them that perhaps it is the very essence of our civilization which has kept us around and which has bound us together, and we do not consider diversity because we celebrate it. It's a part of us. Our civilization teaches to promote tolerance, to accept differences and to respect dissent. Therefore, that is the essence which has kept us together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So clearly a very strong message for harmony, respect of diversity and communal peace coming from the President from his home in Birbhum district in West Bengal, Kirnahar. At Kirnahar with Nirmal Sarkar, Monideepa Banerjee, NDTV.
Well, one of the most senior ministers in the Prime Minister's cabinet, Arun Jaitley, also hit out over rising incidents of intolerance today, as well as vandalism, such as by ally Shiv Sena. He said those indulging in vandalism should be punished, that there needs to be a proper debate on these issues rather than violent acts. He also, for the first time, confirmed that indeed Amit Shah had spoken to members of the party who had made insensitive and controversial comments recently. My colleague Rahul Srivastav spoke to Arun Jaitley earlier today.
All that has been happening, the intolerance and other things, definitely bad news. And that is why when I was speaking to Mr. Jaitley, I started by asking him that on one side there are these incidents and there has been a second appeal from the President of India for greater tolerance within the country.
I think the President's appeal should be seriously listened to by all and heeded to. It's the correct advice which can be given under these circumstances. We are a very large country and therefore it's understandable that everyone can't have the same opinion on every subject. There are bound to be differences of opinion. But there is a methodology in a democracy how those differences of opinion are to be voiced. Particularly when these differences of opinion can be on sensitive issues. Some of these issues can reflect on inter-community relationships, some can reflect on relationship with neighbors, some can reflect on sensitive states like Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir. And therefore we have to be extremely restrained when we use our language. And the level of discourse has to have civility. We must raise the level of discourse. Unfortunately, what is happening is that some people feel that by an outlandish display of some kind of vandalism, they get a greater publicity. And therefore a group of 5 or 10 people will strive for that publicity. I think a few things need to be done. This kind of conduct where there is violence, there is coercion, there is vandalism requires to be condemned absolutely. Those indulging in such groups, particularly mainstream political parties, must seriously introspect whether in a large parliamentary democracy which is gaining strength all over the world, which is being recognized because of its strength, these incidents don't bring a fair name to the country. And therefore we must seriously introspect that this is not the right tactics to be in. And finally, my appeal to my friends in the media also would be that excessive publicity to such vandalism actually is encouraging copycat vandalism. There were instances a few years ago, if you remember, that everybody decided to throw a shoe whenever he had to protest. Today they have decided to pour ink on people. Now this is copycat vandalism. Please don't give more than their due share of publicity to those who indulge in these actions.
But Mr. Jaitley, the party president, Mr. Amit Shah, has criticized, pulled up those who have been making these kind of remarks. Some have been from the party ranks, some have been from the fringe elements. The fact remains that the opposition has been charging the government and the BJP that since the NDA came to power, these kind of elements are feeling emboldened.
Well, there was shoe throwing going on when the Congress was in power. There have been instances of violence when Congress was in power. This has nothing to do with us. In fact, the government, let alone disassociating, we completely deprecate this kind of practice of any form of violence or vandalism being indulged in by anyone.
Mr. Jaitley, we will like to know that, say, this is about these kind of elements, fringe elements, which we call you disassociate. But what about the Shiv Sena attacking the BCCI headquarters?
Well, you can legitimately have two views on whether this is the opportune time for Indo-Pak cricket or not. But that view has to be expressed within the limits of democratic polity. That can't be done by just barging into a BCCI office itself.
Mr. Jaitley, on one hand, the Prime Minister is going about trying to talk about India's better investment scenario, how the Indian economy is growing. You have been talking about the fact that how the Indian economy perhaps is the best placed economy for a leap forward. Don't you think all these incidents do undermine what we can call the India story?
I think globally we are doing extremely well as far as the economy is concerned compared to other parts of the world. We are taking the right decision, and these kind of incidents become a policy diversion.
Well, strong words there from Arun Jaitley and of course from the President, both of them speaking to NDTV earlier today. Well, joining us here in the studio, Tavleen Singh, Shiv Vishwanathan, we've got Ejaz Ilmi of the BJP and Pawan Verma of the JDU joining us. Tavleen Singh, let me ask you first. Okay, we've heard two very strong statements today. The President actually repeating this message for I think which is the fourth time in the last 2 weeks, and Arun Jaitley, one of the most senior ministers, making a very strong statement today. Do you think that this marks the beginning of the end of hate politics, or we're still going to see people speaking out of turn?
Well, I think that I would have really liked to hear the Prime Minister say what I heard just now.
From Arun Jaitley.
From Arun Jaitley and from the President. Why is the Prime Minister not making it clear to some very bad people in his fold that he doesn't approve of young boys being killed, pulled off buses and pulled off a truck and being killed the way this poor Zahid was killed? And you know, that message, the message that we've heard, is not strong enough till it comes from the Prime Minister. So I'm actually quite disappointed that the Prime Minister hasn't said these things, you know, because you know, a senior minister and the President is not the leader of the country. The leader of this country is the Prime Minister, and he should have spoken instead.
Ejaz, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I definitely want to take that. I think, Tavleen, you're being very unkind. The fact that the party president hauled up the ministers and spoke to them, senior ministers have spoken about it. The Prime Minister earlier also has said the same things. That he's talked about tolerance and the president's message. Earlier also in Feb, when the attacks on the church happened, he came out very, very strongly about the
when
idea of
these
India.
three men were killed, why didn't he just tweet about it and say that he was appalled by what had happened?
Well,
just a little tweet.
Well, across the board, it has been universally condemned. Acts of vandalism by groups, vigilante groups taking law into their own hands. We can't substitute constitutional law and the government's response to be replaced by fringe elements on whether it's right of center, left of center, or whether it's any kind of religious denomination.
But these are not fringe,
to dictate.
No, they're not fringe. They're members of parliament.
The people who kill are self-appointed vigilante groups.
No, I'm talking about those who made the insensitive comments. They're MPs, they're MLAs. They're not fringe.
Those statements are condemned also. On your show, I've been on your show on the first day where Dajvi happened and said the same thing, that we can't afford to make these statements because
do you know the sher teri rahbari ka sawal hai?
Yes.
Tu idhar udhar ki baat kar. Yeah.
Tera kafla kyun luta? Nobody's interested in looting the kafla.
No, but what about the
kafla that is India has to continue.
It is the leadership of the Prime Minister that's
the leadership of the Prime Minister is very evident by statements of the President, various ministers that you've seen, Mr. Arun Jaitley, coming out very clearly.
The President's
you will
statement
stymie and
but
hobble
the President's statement is not the Prime
Minister.
Minister.
In this country.
The President's statement is not the Prime Minister's. The
Absolutely,
President doesn't speak for the Prime Minister.
But making this, by questioning and putting a question mark, you are hobbling and stymieing the entire effort of trying to come to a situation where we can seriously, in a peaceful manner, discuss diversity, discuss pluralism, and get back to sanity, and actually deprecate vandalism, mob lynching, and vigilante groups taking over this country. We have to fight this together.
Okay, Shiv Vishwanathan, it's very interesting that the President of India, who's generally sort of stayed out of controversy, has made it a point to talk about tolerance and diversity several times over the last 2 weeks. I've counted about 4 times. And it's very deliberate. Even the Rashtrapati Bhavan release yesterday, this was the title, and he was speaking in West Bengal. What do you think Pranab Mukherjee is trying to say? I mean, what is the significance of the President speaking out on this?
See, I think it's very important the President did what he did. I think it's very welcome. But I think Tavleen's point is very important politically. The President has made a speech at a time of festival. It's a moment of goodwill. What he's saying is important. But if it's not backed by the Prime Minister in an equal language, then I think we face a discrepancy. Not all differences are constructive. We have to understand this. I think she's as much for amity as anyone else. What she's saying is the message to be effective has to also come from the Prime Minister. And in that, he has been a bit silent.
And yet, you would concede that Arun Jaitley's words are very strong words today. In fact, they're the strongest by any senior minister in this government since this entire, this one crisis after another has broken out.
Yeah. First, the time lag.
Too late.
If these statements had come before the President's statement, I would take them more seriously. I think it's important to return to a sense of peace. But I think the way the message is articulated is very important. I think this is something we have to understand. And you can't dismiss all these people as fringe elements till we realize that violence is a part of normalcy. This idea of the violence of fringe elements will lead to very little understanding of what's going on in the country.
This question of timing, should it have come earlier? Even if it had to come from Arun Jaitley?
We've had this debate. People on your television channels and across the board have been giving statements contrary and condemning it in unequivocal terms. And there have been insensitive, infuriating statements made, and which is why our party president pulled up certain people and said that you have to talk the language of constitution, because there's no getting out from the fact that being a secular democracy, following constitutional norms, and you've been elected and voted, and you are in position of power by the oath of the constitution. So how can you say things contrary?
But did the president force the government's hand? Is, I think, the point Vishwanathan is making, that once the president started speaking out, did it become awkward for the government to be silent on this?
The fact that this acts of vandalism, mob lynching, started giving this country a very, very bad name in an interconnected social world and social media. News travels immensely fast across. It impacts the country as a whole.
Tavleen has a quick intervention before I come to Pawan Verma.
Ijaz, 1 minute. 1 second, 1 second. It isn't just about the way we look to the rest of the world.
It's about us.
It's the way we look to ourselves. I'm ashamed to live in a country where young boys or old men are killed for nothing on rumors, and I'm ashamed to live in a country where a chief minister can say Muslims can live in this country if they stop eating beef. You go away, go to Pakistan.
Why should I? Why should anybody go anywhere?
No, I'm joking with you, but it's a very serious matter when a chief minister speaks
absolutely.
Like that.
Pawan Verma, would you at least welcome the first, what I would think is the first really strong statement that has come from the government on these incidents today from Arun Jaitley? Would you at least welcome that as a first step?
Well, you've already anticipated my reaction, Nidhi, by saying the first strong statement. After so much has happened, I'm sorry to say, Nidhi, while I welcome what Arun Jaitley has said belatedly, there appears to be two conveniently arranged cynical narratives. First, you allow, you in fact provide encouragement and nurturing to elements which you know are socially divisive and which stoke religious hatred. Let me give you quickly 3 or 4 examples. Sadhvi Niranjan Jyoti makes that particularly condemnable statement about Ramzado. It takes 2 days in Parliament to stall Parliament for the Prime Minister to come and say almost half-heartedly that such statement should not be made. But that very evening, the party makes her a campaigner for the Delhi elections, and she continues to make those speeches throughout the campaign, just stopping short and saying Ramzado ya, and the crowd then uses the word that was an expletive. Similarly, Sakshi Maharaj in the precincts of Parliament talks about Godse. We are told a notice has been issued to him. We don't know any action has been taken. You choose Yogi Adityanath to be your mascot for the UP by-elections. You use love jihad consciously for short-term political gain. And after that, belatedly, much after when it's required, the Prime Minister in some rally in Bihar after the President has spoken, he makes a statement without referring to Dadri, without referring to the horrific incident in Dadri, where without taking sides, at least he could have condemned the fact that next to the capital of India, a person has been lynched on the rumor of what he ate or did not eat. What is the kind of country we are living in? Rationalists, thinkers are being shot dead. We have just heard that an organization is going to celebrate the birthday of Godse on November 15th as Balidan Divas, where is the condemnation?
All right.
I say to you that, that this, what Mr. Jaitley has said, or what the Prime Minister never seems to say, unless it's too late or said half-heartedly, is just not enough if we want to preserve sanity in this country.